So we're taking the dream for your average person in America or wherever they are and saying for 3 days you could become Pablo Escobar.
On this day in 2009, Bernie Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison. Madoff orchestrated the largest Ponzi scheme in history, swindling investors out of billions and ruining countless lives. Do you think his sentence was too harsh? Let us know in the comments.
Bernie Madoff.
So is this easy money, would you say, that you're making with Madoff?
Easy. Easy peasy.
When it comes to financial manipulation, it's hard to beat the story of Bernie Madoff. Madoff had it all on Wall Street. He ran a multi-billion-dollar company and held sway over the Nasdaq stock exchange. But his own hubris eventually got the best of him.
Madoff was a family-dominated firm, so Bernie was the top of everything. His family had all the key positions.
Madoff confessed to his sons Mark and Andrew that he had orchestrated the largest Ponzi scheme in history through his investment securities firm, swindling investors out of billions. Mark and Andrew then turned on their father and reported him to the FBI, who arrested Madoff on a charge of securities fraud. He eventually pled guilty to 11 felonies and was sentenced to 150 years in prison, where he died in April 2021.
The office has been secured. We have Bernie Madoff in custody, and we just know a lot of money is missing. Our biggest problem was we don't know how it happened.
Richard Scott Smith.
I agreed to talk to you today because I want to get my story out, and I want everybody in the world knowing that I'm not the person that they've claimed me to be.
Fans of Showtime's Love Fraud may recognize the name Richard Scott Smith, as he was the primary subject of the 4-part documentary. Smith was a serial con artist, running numerous online romance scams and ruining the lives of multiple women. These women appear in the documentary, sharing their harrowing stories of being duped and misled.
You know, I may hate him for all these things, but I wouldn't have gotten in so deep if I hadn't thought I loved him.
Smith would use a fake identity and marry his victims, then use their financial information to obtain a line of credit. He would then flee, off to marry someone else, leaving his previous partners both heartbroken and in severe debt. Smith was known to have married at least 10 times before he was arrested at the end of the series.
I'm human too. I've been a victim, Rachel, to things that are not true.
Anna Sorokin.
I'm trying to make my story to be like, oh, I made a mistake, but I'm trying to turn this around without trying to glamorize the mistake itself.
Financial schemes are getting harder by the day thanks to rapid technological advancements, but they still happen. Just ask Anna Sorokin, a Russian-born woman who defrauded various institutions of nearly $300,000. Having emigrated to New York in 2013, Sorokin quickly became a master manipulator.
She doesn't go for the big money right away. It's not like she surrounds herself with, hedge fund moguls. She surrounds herself with cool.
She invented a new identity, Anna Delvey, and forged financial documents to appear like a rich German heiress with access to a multi-million euro trust fund. With these documents, Sorokin secured massive loans, which she used to sustain a lavish lifestyle. However, her deceit was exposed when she duped her friend Rachel Deloche Williams of over $60,000. Williams alerted the police, leading to Sorokin's arrest in a sting operation. She subsequently served 2 years in prison.
I mean, you took advantage of people.
I definitely did, yeah. And I was younger and I learned from my mistakes.
But did you?
I did,
Did
yes.
you learn from those mistakes? I mean, are you not going to do anything like this ever again?
Absolutely not.
Billy McFarland.
But was it more to prove yourself or was it more for money?
It was to prove myself, and once again, I was totally wrong and I lied to investors to get money.
Called the poster boy for millennial scamming by Vanity Fair, Billy McFarland is widely known as the man behind the ill-fated Fyre Festival. Well, ill-fated isn't the right word, more like manipulative. Taking place in the Bahamas, the Fyre Festival was marketed as a luxury music event with villas, gourmet food, the whole 9 yards.
I think we chose the right island. We got ours for $10 million, freehold land, no lease. We own the land forever.
Visitors paid good money to attend, but upon arrival, they were met with a horribly planned disaster that bore no resemblance to the promised opulence. Tons of lawsuits emerged accusing McFarland of fraud, and he was found guilty on 2 counts. He was ordered to pay $26 million in damages and served 3.5 years in prison.
Before we had the worst luck,
I think we had the best luck. And like, it sounds crazy, but so many things had to go right to make it this big of a failure.
Joe Exotic.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
The Tiger King himself operated the Greater Wynnewood Exotic Animal Park in Oklahoma, known for its prominent display of large cats. And as chronicled in the famous Netflix documentary, he had a fierce rivalry with Carol Baskin, the owner of Florida's Big Cat Rescue. Exotic displayed numerous sociopathic tendencies, which were on full display in the documentary.
All these people think that everybody else in society are abusers but her. I mean, she's a master marketer. I'll give her that.
Despite his purported love for animals, he was continuously alleged to have mistreated those in his park. Not only did he publicly accuse Baskin of killing her missing husband, Don Lewis, he also put out a hit on her, which failed and led to his arrest. Exotic was convicted on charges of animal mistreatment and attempted murder for hire and sentenced to 21 years in prison.
And I get letters from 8-year-old kids to 95-year-old grandmas. And every letter says, it's because I was unapologetic, I stood up for what I believed in, and because I'm not ashamed of who I am.
Dorothea Puente.
I used to be a very good person at one time.
Known as the Death House landlady, Dorothea Puente sounds like someone out of a fairy tale. She opened a boarding house in Sacramento and seemed like an upstanding member of the community, donating to various charities and using her boarding house to host AA meetings. She also aided her elderly guests in setting up their Social Security checks. However, this was all part of Puente's grand plan.
This is what we would call the death room. This is where she brought her victims after she had induced drugs into their alcohol.
Throughout the 1980s, the matron killed 9 guests of her boarding house, buried their remains in her yard, and cashed their Social Security checks. It shows that Puente was a maniac who was highly aggressive and driven primarily by her own financial gain.
I spent 15 years as a homicide detective, and in those 15 years, I had seen many victims of homicide, but none of those compared to what I found when I was digging through the yard.
Elizabeth Holmes.
Every person should have the ability to get that type of test.
And speaking of people willing to deceive for financial gain, let's talk about the infamous Elizabeth Holmes. Like Bernie Madoff, Holmes manipulated investors with her company Theranos, which claimed to have revolutionized blood testing with a fancy new machine. However, this machine never actually worked. Holmes not only lied to investors about the company's capabilities, she also lied to her own customers through the machine's bogus results.
What I know is that I've put the best people in place to be able to investigate every aspect of this and ensure that we meet the quality standards that we hold ourselves to.
Theranos raised more than $700 million, and Forbes valued Holmes as the youngest self-made female billionaire in American history. But it all came crashing down when investigators looked into the company and uncovered a massive web of deceit. Holmes was charged with fraud and sentenced to 11 years in prison.
If a female leader can build a company from nothing to something that impacts people's lives every single day, it's like there's nothing we can't do.
Diane Downs.
They kept telling me, if you just remember, they told me I had voids in my memory, that there was 25 minutes of time missing, and that I was hiding something, protecting something.
Called a deviant sociopath by one psychiatrist, Diane Downs gained notoriety for a particularly heinous crime conducted in 1983. On May 19th, Downs shot her 3 children, then wounded herself in the left arm. She subsequently rushed them to a hospital, claiming they had been the victims of an attempted carjacking.
He did not take time to point the gun and shoot me, obviously, because he would have shot me the same way he did the kids.
However, hospital staff was immediately suspicious of her story. 2 of the children survived, but 1 tragically passed from her injuries. Following an official investigation, Downs was arrested 9 months later and convicted largely on the testimony of one of her surviving children. She supposedly committed the acts because the man she was entangled with didn't want kids in their lives. In 1984, Downs was sentenced to life in prison.
To my complete surprise, Diane was non-emotional, not a tear in her eye.
Ted Bundy.
Clearly they're people. Clearly they're flesh and blood, and they have, all the characteristics of human beings, but he would not allow himself to feel those emotions for the victim.
Ask any professional and they will tell you that Ted Bundy was as mean as they come. His own attorney, Polly Nelson, called him, quote, the very definition of heartless evil. Biographer Ann Rule said that he was a sadistic sociopath. Even Bundy labeled himself as the most cold-hearted son of a gun you'll ever meet. Gun is our own word.
If someone's crazy enough and nutty enough to do something like that, I can't stop them. There's nothing I can do.
Bundy was an attractive man who skillfully manipulated his persona to enchant women, often luring them into his car, where he would restrain and kill them. Even after his arrest, Bundy tried to maintain his innocence, weaving lies for lawyers, the media, and visitors alike. However, as the truth closed in, he eventually realized the game was up and confessed to killing 30 people.
I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment society has, and I think society deserves to be protected from me and from others like me.
Charles Manson.
If you hold the negative up to the light, you don't see the light, you just see the negative. So I'm a reflection of your negative, there's no doubt about that, and I can handle that also.
At his 12th parole hearing, Charles Manson was said to have a, quote, history of controlling behavior. That is putting it lightly. Perhaps the most infamous cult leader of all time, Manson was the head of his eponymous family, which gained notoriety in 1969 after killing actress Sharon Tate.
Do you feel blame? Are you mad? Do you feel like
But Tate was just one of 9 victims, most of whom Manson murdered by proxy through his manipulated family members. His motive is still ambiguous, but author Vincent Bugliosi believes that he intended to start a race war. At the aforementioned parole hearing, the panel also indicated that Manson had no remorse for the crimes and harbored a total lack of empathy. He died in prison at the age of 83.
I'm not ready, Your Honor. I need more time.
What do you make of these stories? Let us know in the comments below. Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.